The most dangerous men in Chicago stopped talking the moment Cale D'Amico dragged an unknown woman onto the ballroom floor, because everyone knew people only stood beside him moments before tragedy followed. Rain poured across downtown Chicago like liquid smoke, drowning the city beneath silver reflections and blurred neon lights. Far from the crowded streets and ordinary lives hidden behind apartment windows, another world existed beneath the surface of the city. A world controlled by men whose names never appeared in newspapers, but quietly decided who survived and who disappeared. Selena Vos had spent years trying to stay invisible from people like that. At 26, her life had become a cycle of exhaustion and silence. Tiny piano performances inside expensive restaurants barely covered her rent. Debt notices covered the kitchen counter of her cramped apartment. The elevator in her building had been broken for almost 3 months, forcing her to climb 7 flights of cracked concrete stairs every night while pretending her life was not slowly collapsing around her. Most nights ended the same way. Cold coffee, unpaid bills, and painful silence. The loneliness affected her more than the financial pressure. Chicago was full of people, yet Selena moved through it like a ghost nobody noticed. Her family ties had disappeared years earlier after her mother's death, leaving her emotionally detached from nearly everyone around her. She trusted routines because routines could not betray her. That illusion shattered the night she accepted a private performance request from an unfamiliar luxury event company offering 5 times her normal payment. The offer felt suspicious from the beginning. No official company website existed. The location arrived through encrypted email instructions only hours before the event. Transportation had already been arranged without her permission. Every detail carried the kind of secrecy wealthy people used when they wanted their actions hidden from the public eye. Still, Selena needed money badly enough to ignore instinct. The black vehicle that collected her traveled farther from the center of Chicago until the glowing skyline disappeared behind isolated roads lined with dark trees and gated properties. By the time the car approached a massive estate overlooking Lake Michigan, Selena already felt trapped inside something far larger than a simple performance. The mansion resembled an ancient palace hidden inside the modern city. Tall iron gates guarded the entrance, while armed security personnel watched every arriving vehicle with military precision. Expensive foreign cars filled the circular driveway. Men in dark suits stood silently beneath stone archways, their expressions emotionless and cold. Nobody smiled. Nobody spoke above a whisper. Inside, the mansion transformed into something almost unreal. Golden chandeliers illuminated enormous marble halls. Classical music drifted through the ballroom, while wealthy elites moved slowly beneath dim amber lighting. Diamonds flashed from the necks of elegant women, while mafia soldiers disguised as security lined the walls like statues. Everything looked beautiful. Everything felt dangerous. Selena immediately understood she did not belong there. The wealthy guests carried themselves with terrifying confidence, the kind built through power instead of morality. Many stared at Selena with subtle judgment the moment they noticed her inexpensive dress and uncertain posture. Their expressions carried silent cruelty hidden beneath polished appearances. To them, she was temporary, disposable. One of the event coordinators quickly directed Selena toward the ballroom piano without explanation. The woman avoided eye contact entirely, speaking with nervous urgency before disappearing back into crowd. That was the first moment Selena realized people inside the mansion were afraid of something or someone. The tension in the ballroom felt unnatural. Conversations repeatedly stopped whenever certain men crossed the room. Several guests constantly checked exits and balconies, as though expecting violence at any moment. Even the musicians avoided looking directly toward the upper level, overlooking the ballroom floor. Then Selena heard the name whispered behind her, Cale D'Amico. The reaction across the room changed instantly. Some guests lowered their eyes. Others stepped aside without hesitation. A few powerful-looking men visibly stiffened with contained hostility. The atmosphere darkened before Selena even saw him. Stories about Cale D'Amico existed all across Chicago. Some called him a criminal genius. Others described him as a monster hiding behind expensive suits and political connections. Entire neighborhoods feared him without ever seeing his face. Rival organizations disappeared after challenging him. Federal investigations collapsed mysteriously whenever his name surfaced. Nobody could prove anything against him. That made him even more terrifying. Selena finally looked toward the upper staircase when movement spread across the ballroom. Cale descended slowly into view, surrounded by armed men. Silence followed him. He looked nothing like the loud, violent criminals shown in television dramas. His appearance remained controlled, elegant, almost painfully calm. Dark, tailored clothing emphasized his broad frame, while the expression on his face revealed absolutely nothing. Cold gray eyes scanned the ballroom with calculated indifference, making powerful men twice his age suddenly appear nervous. The silence around him felt heavier than shouting. Selena immediately understood why people feared him. Cale carried himself like someone completely comfortable around death. The evening continued under unbearable tension. Selena focused on the piano keys while secretly observing the room. Several groups clearly hated each other despite pretending otherwise. Small gestures revealed hidden conflict. Sharp stares, forced handshakes, silent bodyguards watching rival tables. Something dangerous was building beneath the luxury. Then everything changed. One accidental mistake destroyed Selena's invisibility. While moving between musical sets, a server collided with her near the ballroom floor. A glass shattered loudly against marble tiles, instantly drawing attention across the room. Red wine stained Selena's dress, while dozens of elite guests turned toward her with irritation. For one humiliating moment, she became the center of the ballroom, and Cale D'Amico noticed her. The room grew unnaturally still as his eyes locked onto Selena. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. Cale crossed the ballroom slowly, while armed guards remained behind him like shadows. The closer he approached, the more terrified the surrounding guests appeared. Selena could physically feel people distancing themselves from her, like proximity itself had become dangerous. Without warning, Cale seized her wrist. The entire ballroom froze. Shock spread across nearby faces instantly, because nobody expected Cale D'Amico to touch anyone publicly, especially not an unknown woman, clearly beneath the social status of the elite criminal families surrounding them. Then he pulled her directly onto the ballroom floor. The orchestra stopped briefly before restarting under visible panic. Selena's pulse hammered violently as Cale guided her into the center of the room where every enemy, rival, and political ally could see them clearly. She wanted to pull away, but fear rooted her in place. Cale's expression never changed. The dance began slowly beneath golden lights and complete silence. Around them, dangerous men watched with barely concealed hostility. Several women exchanged disgusted glances toward Selena's stained dress and lower-class appearance. Older mafia figures looked openly insulted by Cale's decision. To many of them, Selena represented contamination, an outsider suddenly standing where only power and bloodline belonged. The hatred inside the room became suffocating. Selena realized something horrifying during the dance. These people were not angry because Cale touched her. They were angry because he chose her publicly. That choice alone could destroy lives. The orchestra music echoed through the ballroom while psychological terror tightened around her with every passing second. Cale remained unreadable, but his enemies were not. Men watched from balconies with expressions filled with calculation and resentment. Others whispered quietly behind raised glasses, while bodyguards subtly repositioned themselves near exits. It no longer felt like a dance. It felt like a declaration, a war nobody fully understood yet. Then Selena noticed something else. Blood. A thin streak of fresh blood remained visible across Cale's right hand where it rested against hers. Not old blood. Fresh blood, recently spilled. The realization sent fear crashing through her chest. Someone inside the mansion had already been hurt tonight, or killed, for the first time during the dance. Cale briefly tightened his grip, as though sensing the exact moment she noticed. His eyes shifted toward the balcony level, where several rival mafia leaders observed them with cold interest. And suddenly Selena understood the terrifying truth. Cale had not chosen her randomly. He was sending a message. She simply did not know what the message meant yet. The orchestra continued playing while tension spread across the ballroom, like gasoline approaching flame. More guards quietly entered the room. Several guests appeared ready to leave, while others watched with growing anticipation. Then the first gunshot exploded outside the mansion gates. The music stopped instantly. Everyone feared Cale D'Amico for one reason. Every woman connected to him eventually disappeared without explanation. The gunshots outside the mansion shattered the illusion of elegance instantly. Guests rushed away from the ballroom floor in controlled panic, while armed security flooded the entrances with military precision. Crystal glasses shattered against marble. Women in expensive gowns stumbled through crowded hallways, while powerful men barked quiet orders into hidden communication devices. Yet in the center of the chaos, Cale D'Amico remained completely still. Selena stood frozen beside him, her breathing uneven as distant screams echoed beyond the mansion walls. The ballroom no longer resembled a luxury gathering. It looked like a battlefield moments before war fully erupted. Cale finally released her wrist. Without explanation, 2 armed guards approached Selena immediately. Their expressions remained cold and professional, but the tension in their posture made one thing painfully obvious. This was not protection she could refuse. Before Selena could fully understand what was happening, she was escorted through enormous hallways deeper inside the estate, while gunfire occasionally echoed outside the property grounds. Nobody explained anything to her. Nobody answered questions. Every employee inside the mansion behaved like fear itself controlled the building. By sunrise, Selena realized she was no longer a guest. She was trapped. The room assigned to her looked larger than her entire apartment in Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan, while expensive antique furniture decorated every corner beneath soft golden lighting. Designer dresses waited inside the closet in perfect sizes she never provided. Fresh food appeared constantly without request. Everything looked luxurious. Everything felt like a prison. 2 guards remained stationed outside her door day and night. Her phone had disappeared. The gates surrounding the estate remained sealed. And Cale D'Amico had vanished entirely after the ballroom incident. The isolation slowly began affecting her mind. Hours blended together inside the suffocating silence of the mansion. Selena wandered through massive empty hallways, while employees lowered their eyes whenever she approached. Nobody treated her cruelly, yet nobody treated her normally either. The staff acted as though speaking too openly around her could become dangerous. That fear followed Cale's name everywhere. Over the next several days, Selena learned more about him through whispers and direct information. Cale D'Amico had not inherited power. He had taken it. Years earlier, Chicago's criminal underworld belonged to older mafia families controlling political corruption, smuggling operations, and underground financial systems. Cale entered that world as someone insignificant, the son of an abusive dock worker connected to low-level organized crime. People underestimated him because of where he came from. That mistake buried entire families. By 32, Cale controlled territories older mafia bloodlines had protected for generations. Rival organizations collapsed mysteriously around him. Federal witnesses disappeared before trials. Politicians once loyal to other criminal empires suddenly changed alliances overnight. Nobody fully understood how Cale gained power so quickly. But everyone understood what happened to those who resisted him. They vanished. Selena overheard terrifying stories while wandering the estate corridors late at night. Servants whispered about executions hidden beneath abandoned warehouses. Security guards quietly mentioned betrayal punishments, so brutal entire crews stayed loyal out of fear alone. Yet the strangest stories involved women. According to rumors surrounding the mansion, Cale never allowed emotional attachments. Women appeared beside him occasionally at public events, but disappeared weeks later without explanation. Some claimed they were paid off. Others believed something far darker happened once they became inconvenient. No one dared investigate. The uncertainty itself became terrifying. That fear deepened when Selena finally saw Cale again 3 days after the ballroom attack. The mansion library remained nearly dark, except for soft fireplace light illuminating shelves of ancient books and expensive whiskey bottles. Selena entered accidentally while searching for another hallway, only to stop instantly at the sight of him seated near the window overlooking the lake. Cale did not appear surprised to see her. He simply observed her quietly with those same unreadable gray eyes. For several long seconds, neither moved. The silence surrounding him felt unnatural, heavy enough to suffocate thought itself. Selena noticed details she missed during the ballroom encounter. A faint scar crossed one side of his neck beneath the collar of his dark shirt. Bruises marked his knuckles. Exhaustion lingered beneath his calm appearance, though he hid it well. He looked like a man who slept beside violence every night. More unsettling was the emotional emptiness surrounding him. Cale spoke rarely to anyone inside the estate. Employees rushed nervously whenever he entered a room. Security personnel stiffened immediately in his presence. Even wealthy political guests visiting the mansion seemed uncomfortable under his attention. Power followed him like shadow, yet isolation followed him too. That realization disturbed Selena more than fear itself, because for brief moments, Cale no longer resembled a monster from whispered stories. He resembled someone emotionally destroyed long before becoming dangerous. The mansion eventually introduced another threat entirely. Vivian Cross arrived 4 days after the ballroom shooting. Unlike Selena, Vivian belonged perfectly inside Cale's world. Beautiful, wealthy, and socially untouchable, Vivian moved through the estate with effortless authority. Expensive diamonds decorated her hands, while confidence sharpened every movement she made. Rumors connected her family to political dynasties stretching across the East Coast, though whispers suggested her relationship with organized crime ran even deeper. The moment Vivian saw Selena, cold hostility filled her expression instantly. She disguised it beneath polished elegance, but the hatred remained obvious. Vivian treated Selena like an intruder contaminating something valuable. Over the following days, subtle cruelty became routine. Small insults disguised as concern. Public humiliation hidden beneath fake kindness. Comment about Selena's background, clothing, education, and social status slipped constantly into conversation. To people like Vivian, women such as Selena existed beneath notice. That social class divide inside the mansion revealed something uglier than wealth alone. Several elite guests openly mocked Selena's ordinary upbringing whenever they believed she could not hear them. Others questioned why Cale allowed someone like her near important gatherings. It was not simply class discrimination. It carried racial undertones, too. Selena's darker features and immigrant family roots became quiet subject to judgment among old-money criminal elites who viewed themselves as untouchable American royalty despite building fortunes through bloodshed and corruption. The hypocrisy disgusted her, but also frightened her because nobody challenged those attitudes inside Cale's world, not even Cale himself. Meanwhile, rumors surrounding the ballroom incident continued spreading through Chicago's underground networks. Rival mafia families believed Selena possessed sensitive information connected to whatever happened the night gunfire erupted outside the mansion. That assumption made her dangerous. More importantly, it made her valuable. Selena slowly realized people were watching her constantly. Unknown vehicles occasionally appeared beyond the estate gates. Armed guards doubled throughout the property at night. Hidden conversations immediately stopped whenever she entered rooms. Even staff members seemed nervous around certain hallways, as though betrayal existed somewhere inside the mansion itself. Paranoia infected everything. The emotional pressure became unbearable because Selena still understood almost nothing about why Cale selected her publicly during the dance. At first, she believed it was random. Now she knew better. Cale watched her too carefully for coincidence. Though emotionally distant, he noticed everything she did. Security appeared moments after she wandered too far through the estate grounds. Locked rooms suddenly became inaccessible after she examined nearby corridors. Employees changed behavior depending on whether Cale remained inside the mansion. It felt less like imprisonment by force, and more like imprisonment through invisible control. That psychological tension slowly pulled Selena deeper into Cale's orbit despite her fear. One storm-filled evening, she accidentally witnessed another side of him entirely. From an upper balcony overlooking the mansion office below, Selena observed Cale meeting privately with several members of his organization. The atmosphere inside the room remained tense from the beginning. Nobody sat comfortably. Nobody relaxed. Then one man made a mistake. Selena never heard the full accusation, but panic instantly spread across the man's face, while Cale remained terrifyingly calm. No shouting followed. No dramatic threats. Only silence. Cale approached the trembling man slowly, before placing a hand against his shoulder almost gently. Moments later, security guards dragged a man from the office while blood stained the floor beneath him. The meeting continued immediately afterward as though nothing happened. Selena stepped away from the balcony with shaking hands. That single moment destroyed any illusion that Cale's reputation might be exaggerated. He truly was dangerous, not because he enjoyed violence, because violence no longer emotionally affected him at all. Yet the deeper Selena studied him, the more contradictions appeared. Cale protected certain staff members with surprising loyalty. He secretly paid medical expenses for injured employees. Families connected to the organization received financial support after losses. He could destroy lives without hesitation. But fragments of humanity still existed beneath the cruelty. That contradiction became the most dangerous thing about him. Because Selena slowly stopped understanding whether she feared Cale himself or the possibility that he was not entirely the monster everyone described. Days later, during another elite gathering inside the mansion, Selena wandered near the private dining hall, searching for quiet space away from hostile stares and whispered insults. Inside the dim corridor, she suddenly froze. Vivian Cross stood near the entrance, holding a crystal glass beside Cale's untouched drink. Her movements looked careful, deliberate. Selena watched silently from the shadows as Vivian removed a tiny silver vial from her sleeve and emptied several drops into Cale D'Amico's glass before calmly returning to the party. And for the first time since entering the mansion, Selena realized someone inside Cale's inner circle wanted him dead. Selena thought Cale was a monster until she discovered the Empire was built on crimes far darker than murder. The image of Vivian poisoning Cale's drink refused to leave Selena's mind. For the rest of the evening, she watched the ballroom from a distance while pretending nothing had happened. Wealthy politicians laughed beneath crystal chandeliers. Powerful businessmen raised expensive glasses beside criminals responsible for entire neighborhoods drowning in violence. Every smiling face inside the mansion suddenly looked artificial, like masks hiding right underneath. Selena expected panic after witnessing the attempted poisoning. Instead, fear evolved into something more dangerous. Curiosity. She wanted to understand why someone inside Cale's own circle wanted him dead badly enough to risk suicide if discovered. More importantly, she wanted to understand what kind of empire created this level of betrayal beneath polished luxury. That search for answers slowly dragged her deeper into darkness. Over the next several days, Selena began noticing hidden patterns throughout the mansion. Men arrived late at night, carrying locked briefcases. Politicians entered through private underground garages, away from public roads. Expensive artwork occasionally disappeared from hallways only to return days later beside unfamiliar security personnel. Nothing inside the estate happened without purpose. Even the silence felt organized. The deeper Selena observed the mansion, the more paranoia infected her thoughts. Tiny cameras hid within decorative walls. Guards rotated positions every hour with military precision. Some hallways remained inaccessible unless authorized by biometric scanners. Cale's home no longer resembled a mansion. It resembled a fortress protecting dangerous secrets. One rainy afternoon, Selena accidentally uncovered the first piece of the truth. While wandering through an unused library corridor, she noticed one office door partially open despite most private rooms remaining locked constantly. Voices echoed faintly from somewhere deeper inside the estate, but the office itself stood empty. For reasons she could not explain, Selena stepped inside. The room belonged to Cale. Dark wooden shelves lined the walls, while maps of Chicago covered an enormous table beneath dim lighting. Surveillance photographs, shipping routes, political schedules, and coded financial ledgers remained scattered across the desk, as though someone left abruptly moments earlier. At first, none of it made sense. Then Selena noticed several documents stamped with federal government seals. Her pulse slowed. She moved closer carefully. Names of politicians appeared repeatedly beside offshore bank accounts worth millions of dollars. Construction companies listed enormous payments connected to neighborhoods scheduled for demolition. Hidden reports described illegal weapon shipments disguised as humanitarian aid. And buried between those files, Selena discovered something far worse. Children's names. Entire lists. At first, She believed they were school records or immigration documents until she noticed missing person reports attached beside financial transfers. Several pages described trafficking routes moving vulnerable children across state lines through fake charity organizations protected by corrupt officials. The realization hollowed her chest instantly. This empire was not built only on murder. It was built on exploitation powerful enough to poison entire systems. Selena stepped backward from the desk in horror. For weeks, she had viewed Cale D'Amico as the center of the darkness surrounding the mansion. But these files revealed something much larger. Politicians, judges, federal agencies, wealthy corporations, and criminal organizations working together beneath the illusion of legality. Cale was not simply part of corruption. He operated inside a machine already rotten long before he gained power. That intellectual realization terrified Selena more than violence itself, because monsters were easier to understand when they stood alone. This evil wore government suits and appeared on television smiling beside American flags. A sudden sound outside the office door snapped Selena back into panic. She hurried away from the desk moments before footsteps approached the corridor. By the time security personnel crossed nearby hallways, Selena had already disappeared deeper into the mansion with shaking hands and unanswered questions consuming her thoughts. That night, she could barely sleep. The files haunted her constantly. For the first time since entering Cale's world, Selena began questioning whether he truly controlled the Empire, or whether the Empire controlled him too. Those thoughts became even more complicated after the arrival of Adrian Vale. The federal agent entered the mansion 3 nights later during a private gathering involving political donors and business executives. Unlike the nervous officials surrounding him, Adrian carried himself with cold confidence sharpened through years of manipulation. Tall, polished, and dangerously intelligent, Adrian looked more like a senator than a federal investigator. But Selena immediately sensed something false beneath his calm professionalism. Cale greeted Adrian with visible tension rather than hostility. That detail disturbed her deeply. Men like Cale D'Amico did not fear many people. Yet during the entire evening, Cale watched Adrian carefully as though one wrong move could trigger disaster. Selena secretly studied Adrian from a distance throughout the night. The federal agent spoke comfortably with mafia leaders, wealthy investors, and judges connected to Chicago's political machine. He laughed beside criminals responsible for violence while discussing law enforcement operations over expensive whiskey. Nobody treated him like an outsider. He belonged there. The realization confirmed Selena's growing suspicion that corruption had infected every level of power surrounding the mansion. Later that evening, Selena accidentally overheard fragments of conversation while passing a private office corridor. Adrian's voice remained calm behind a closed door, while Cale answered with restrained anger. Though the full discussion stayed unclear, certain phrases reached her through the silence. Federal investigations, protected routes, witness removals, political leverage. Nothing about the conversation resembled law enforcement. It sounded like negotiation between predators dividing territory. When Cale finally exited the office, something about him looked different. For the first time since Selena met him, his composure appeared unstable. His jaw remained tense. Fury darkened his expression beneath forced calm. Then his eyes met hers across the hallway. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Cale stared at Selena with unsettling intensity before dismissing nearby guards and walking away alone into the darkness of the mansion. That brief moment left Selena emotionally shaken because beneath his cold exterior, she glimpsed exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion, moral exhaustion, like carrying secrets heavy enough to destroy whatever remained of his humanity. That emotional conflict slowly infected her thoughts against her will. Selena wanted to hate Cale completely. It would have been easier. Instead, she saw fragments of someone trapped inside violence, so long he no longer knew how to exist outside it. The mansion itself became increasingly unstable over the following days. Security doubled suddenly. Staff members disappeared without explanation. Several guards arrived visibly injured after nighttime operations no one discussed openly. Fear spread quietly through hallways like smoke before fire. Someone inside the organization was betraying Cale. Everyone knew it. Nobody knew who. Selena's paranoia worsened after realizing she was constantly being watched. Guards appeared moments after she entered certain areas. Conversation stopped whenever she approached groups of employees. Even her bedroom occasionally looked disturbed after she returned from downstairs meals. Someone searched her belongings regularly. That suffocating surveillance pushed Selena toward escape. She began studying mansion routines carefully. Security shift changes, unlocked exits, blind spots within camera coverage. Every night, she mentally mapped possible routes away from the estate toward nearby roads. Yet each time escape felt possible, hesitation stopped her. Part of that hesitation came from fear. Leaving the mansion could expose her directly to rival mafia families already convinced she possessed dangerous information. Outside Cale's protection, survival might become impossible. But another reason disturbed her more deeply. Cale himself. Despite everything she discovered, emotional tension continued growing between them in strange, silent ways. He never explained why he brought her into his world, yet his behavior around her gradually changed. Moments of emotional detachment occasionally cracked without warning. One evening during heavy rain, Selena found Cale standing alone beside the mansion greenhouse overlooking the lake. Stormlight reflected across the glass walls while thunder rolled over the dark water outside. For several quiet minutes, neither spoke. Then Selena noticed blood staining his sleeve. Fresh blood. Cale followed her gaze before calmly removing the jacket and tossing it aside without explanation. Bruises covered part of his shoulder beneath the torn fabric, suggesting another violent encounter hidden somewhere beyond the estate walls. What unsettled Selena most was not the injury. It was exhaustion in his eyes. Cale looked emotionally cornered, like pressure from enemies, betrayal, and corruption had begun crushing even someone as dangerous as him. That vulnerability lasted only seconds before his expression hardened again. But Selena could not forget it afterward. The emotional conflict inside her became unbearable because every truth she uncovered pulled her in opposite directions. Cale protected monsters. Yet monsters surrounded him too. Innocent people suffered because of his empire, but powerful systems beyond the mansion created suffering on an even larger scale. Nobody inside this world remained innocent. Not anymore. 2 nights later, betrayal finally exploded openly inside the estate. Selena awoke after midnight to distant shouting echoing through lower hallways. Curious and terrified, she stepped quietly into the corridor where armed guards rushed downstairs with weapons drawn. From the upper balcony overlooking the main hall, Selena witnessed a horrifying scene unfolding below. One of Cale's trusted captains knelt bleeding across the marble floor, while security restrained him brutally. Several terrified employees stood nearby, unable to look away. Cale descended the staircase slowly. Silence swallowed the room instantly. The accused man begged desperately while blood poured from his split lip, but Cale showed no emotion whatsoever. Betrayal inside his organization clearly carried consequences beyond forgiveness. Without raising his voice once, Cale ordered the traitor removed permanently. Minutes later, a single gunshot echoed from somewhere outside the mansion. The staff immediately returned to work afterward, as though execution had become routine. Selena felt sick. That single moment forced her to confront the terrifying reality beneath Cale's empire. Loyalty here was not earned through respect. It was enforced through fear. Shaken and desperate for air, Selena hurried back toward her bedroom long after the mansion quieted again. But the moment she entered her room, something felt wrong. Her belongings had moved slightly. The mirror near the bed stood angled differently than before. Heart racing, Selena approached cautiously until a faint red blinking light beneath the nightstand caught her attention. Hidden carefully beneath the furniture sat a small black tracking device silently transmitting her location. The moment rival mafia leaders realized Cale would not abandon Selena, they secretly signed her death sentence. The blinking red light beneath Selena's nightstand changed everything. For several frozen seconds, she stared at the tracking device while cold fear crawled through her chest. The tiny object looked insignificant compared to the terrifying empire surrounding her, yet confirmed the one truth she could no longer deny. Someone inside the mansion wanted constant access to her movements. Not Cale's enemies outside the estate. Someone already inside. The realization poisoned every hallway, every glance from security, every carefully controlled interaction around her. By sunrise, Selena felt less like a trapped guest and more like prey living inside a cage full of predators pretending to smile. She removed the device carefully without alerting anyone and hid it inside a decorative vase near the lake-facing corridor. The decision carried enormous risk, but she needed to know whether someone would react after losing her location. The reaction came faster than expected. Less than 2 hours later, security teams quietly searched the second floor while pretending routine inspections were underway. Staff members whispered nervously. One guard even entered Selena's room under the excuse of checking electrical systems before leaving visibly frustrated. Whoever planted the tracker had noticed. From that moment forward, fear spread through the mansion with suffocating intensity. Selena's presence no longer felt like a secret problem hidden quietly inside Cale's empire. It had become a public threat affecting every major criminal organization connected to Chicago's underground power structure. Rival families believed Cale's attachment to Selena made him vulnerable, and vulnerable men in organized crime rarely survived long. Over the following week, tensions escalated rapidly across the city. Meetings between criminal leaders ended in violence. Several businesses tied to Cale's network suffered sudden federal raids. News reports discussing corruption, organized crime, and political bribery flooded local media channels almost daily. None of it happened naturally. Someone was orchestrating pressure against Cale from every direction simultaneously. Selena began understanding how power truly worked inside Chicago's elite criminal world. Mafia families no longer relied only on guns and intimidation. They controlled television narratives, political investigations, social media campaigns, and financial markets through carefully hidden influence. Wars were fought through public perception as much as bloodshed, and Selena had become the perfect weapon against Cale. Her ordinary background made her dangerous in ways expensive criminals never expected. She was not raised within organized crime. She carried no loyalty to old bloodlines or corrupt systems. Worse, Cale's visible protection of her exposed emotional weakness rival families could exploit publicly. The rumors spreading through elite circles became increasingly vicious. Some claimed Selena was secretly working with federal authorities. Others accused her of manipulating Cale for money or status. Several wealthy social figures connected to Vivian Cross deliberately humiliated Selena during gatherings by mocking her lower-class upbringing and immigrant roots beneath fake politeness. One evening, during a private charity banquet inside the mansion, Selena experienced the cruelty directly. The ballroom looked beautiful beneath soft candlelight and classical music, but beneath the elegance existed poison sharper than knives. Politicians laughed beside criminal financiers, while wealthy women examined Selena with cold amusement. Vivian Cross controlled the atmosphere effortlessly. Dressed in silver silk and expensive diamonds, Vivian moved the room like royalty observing an unwanted intruder. Every conversation around her carried subtle attacks aimed directly at Selena. Comments about cheap ambition. Remarks about outsiders trying to rise above their place. Thinly disguised insults about women from poorer ethnic communities entering elite American society through manipulation rather than worth. Nobody defended Selena openly, not even Cale. That silence hurt more than the insults themselves. For the first time since entering the mansion, Selena truly understood how alone she remained inside this world. Money and power had not erased racism or class hatred among Chicago's elite criminal families. It had simply made their cruelty more sophisticated. The emotional pressure slowly began breaking her. Sleep became impossible. Every hallway felt monitored. Every meal carried suspicion. Some staff members avoided eye contact entirely now, while others looked at her with pity, usually reserved for people already condemned. Because deep down, everyone inside the mansion understood the same terrifying reality. Cale D'Amico refused to let Selena go, and that decision endangered everyone around him. The atmosphere worsened after Selena accidentally overheard a private conversation between several visiting mafia leaders discussing her fate. Hidden behind a partially open office door, she listened as powerful men calmly debated whether her death would stabilize Chicago's criminal alliances. To them, Selena was not human. She was a political complication, an inconvenience. One elderly mafia figure even argued that Kale's emotional attachment proved he was losing discipline, claiming no empire survived once a leader prioritized personal feelings over business. The conversation chilled Selena deeply because part of it sounded true. Kale had changed, though still emotionally restrained. Subtle cracks had begun appearing beneath his cold control. He became more unpredictable around the mansion. Security protocols changed constantly, depending on Selena's location. Rival organizations received increasingly violent responses whenever threats against her surfaced. People inside the estate noticed. Fear followed him more heavily now. Even Kale's closest men seemed nervous around his growing instability. That instability exploded openly 3 nights later. Another elite gathering filled the mansion with political donors, judges, and criminal financiers, pretending civilization still existed beneath their corruption. Selena remained upstairs intentionally, avoiding public humiliation whenever possible. Then chaos erupted below. Ray's voices echoed to the main hall, before crashing sounds followed seconds later. Guards rushed toward the ballroom, while terrified staff members scattered through corridors. From the upper balcony, Selena witnessed Kale violently assaulting one of Chicago's rival crime figures after the man publicly insulted her during negotiations. The attack happened with horrifying speed. Kale slammed the older man across a marble table, while security struggled to separate them. Blood covered the floor beneath shattered crystal glasses. Politicians fled the room in panic, while rival guards reached for hidden weapons. For one terrifying moment, it looked like war would erupt inside the mansion itself. Yet what disturbed Selena most was not the violence. It was Kale's expression. Pure fury burned behind his normally controlled appearance. The emotional detachment defining him for weeks had vanished entirely. Anyone watching could immediately see the truth rival families feared most. Kale D'Amico cared about Selena, and that emotional weakness threatened his empire more than bullets ever could. After that night, assassination attempts began quietly. The first seemed almost accidental. A luxury vehicle transporting Selena toward a downtown art gallery lost control after another car deliberately forced it toward incoming traffic. Only the driver's extreme maneuver prevented collision with a concrete divider. Security teams immediately escorted Selena back to the estate, while investigators searched unsuccessfully for the second vehicle. The second attempt happened 2 days later. A servant delivered tea to Selena's room shortly after midnight, before collapsing violently downstairs from poison intended for her tray. Panic spread throughout the mansion afterward as Kale ordered brutal interrogations targeting possible traitors within the staff. Nobody trusted anyone anymore. Fear consumed the estate completely. Selena emotionally deteriorated beneath the pressure. The constant danger, surveillance, and isolation slowly destroyed her sense of reality. She barely recognized herself while staring into mirrors now. Dark circles formed beneath exhausted eyes, while anxiety followed every breath. For the first time in her life, she genuinely believed death could arrive without warning. And perhaps the worst part was realizing escape no longer felt simple, because emotionally, Kale had become impossible to ignore. Despite the violence surrounding him, fragments of humanity continued surfacing unexpectedly. Selena occasionally witnessed him standing silently beside the lake at dawn, looking emotionally exhausted beyond words. Some nights he personally checked mansion security near her room without explanation. Injured staff members received expensive medical care anonymously funded through his accounts. The contradictions surrounding him became unbearable. Kale protected monsters, yet somehow he protected her too. That emotional confusion deepened after Roman DeLuca finally entered her life directly. Unlike Kale, Roman carried danger differently. Elegant, charismatic, and terrifyingly intelligent, Roman belonged to one of Chicago's rival criminal dynasties, constantly battling Kale for influence. Rumors described him as more strategic than violent, the kind of man capable of destroying lives through patience instead of rage. Selena first encountered Roman during a heavily guarded political fundraiser hosted at another private estate outside the city. The moment his eyes found her across the crowded ballroom, she sensed immediate calculation beneath his calm smile. Roman approached carefully later that evening while security remained distracted elsewhere. Though brief, the interaction carried hidden meaning impossible to ignore. Without directly threatening her, Roman subtly warned Selena that Kale's empire was collapsing faster than she realized. He implied betrayal already existed deep within the organization and hinted that powerful people wanted Selena removed permanently before larger conflict erupted. More disturbingly, Roman offered help, not publicly, not safely, but the offer existed nonetheless. Selena could not determine whether his intentions were genuine or manipulative. Still, one detail haunted her afterward. Roman looked at her less like a hostage and more like someone carrying answers he desperately needed. Back at the mansion, tensions reached unbearable levels. Kale's organization fractured under growing paranoia, while rival attacks intensified across Chicago. Several trusted associates vanished suddenly. Security patrols tripled overnight. Armed guards now occupied nearly every major hallway inside the estate. Nobody slept peacefully anymore. The mansion felt cursed. Then came the night everything nearly ended. Rain hammered against the estate windows after midnight, while Selena sat awake inside her bedroom, unable to calm the anxiety crushing her thoughts. The lake outside looked black beneath distant lightning flashes. Somewhere downstairs, guards moved restlessly through corridors thick with tension. For a brief moment, silence settled over the mansion. Then glass exploded beside her head. A sniper bullet tore through the bedroom window with deafening force, shattering crystal across the floor as Selena collapsed screaming beside the bed. The second time Kale forced Selena onto the dance floor, his enemies realized a fear Dawn was finally capable of losing everything. The sniper attack changed the atmosphere inside the mansion overnight. What once resembled controlled paranoia transformed into open fear. Armed guards occupied every corridor. Security checkpoints doubled throughout the estate. Black vehicles entered and exited the property at all hours, carrying nervous men with hidden weapons beneath expensive suits. No one trusted anyone anymore. The shattered bedroom window remained unrepaired for 2 days as a silent reminder that someone had nearly killed Selena inside Kale D'Amico's protected world. Every servant who cleaned near the room avoided eye contact. Every guard standing outside her door carried visible tension in his posture. The message behind the attack had been understood clearly by everyone connected to the Empire. Kale's enemies were no longer threatening him. They were hunting her. That realization changed Kale in ways impossible to ignore. For the first time since Selena entered the mansion, his emotional control began slipping publicly. Meetings ended violently. Several trusted captains disappeared after private interrogations. Entire shipments connected to rival organizations were destroyed without warning across Chicago's underground network. Fear spread rapidly through criminal circles because Kale no longer behaved rationally. He behaved personally. And personal decisions destroyed empires faster than greed ever could. 3 nights after the sniper attack, invitations arrived for a gathering powerful enough to reshape Chicago's criminal hierarchy entirely. Every major mafia family would attend. Political financiers, federal contacts, judges, business magnates, corrupt officials, even international criminal investors connected to East Coast syndicates planned appearances. Officially, the event existed to restore peace between rival organizations before violence escalated beyond control. Unofficially, everyone understood the truth. The gathering was a test of Kale D'Amico's remaining authority, and Selena's presence would determine whether he survived it. The event took place inside the Blackthorn Estate, an enormous historic mansion hidden beyond Chicago's northern coastline. Unlike Kale's modern fortress overlooking Lake Michigan, Blackthorn carried old money elegance soaked in generations of corruption. Massive chandeliers illuminated marble staircases beneath painted ceilings, while armed security blended seamlessly among wealthy guests. String musicians performed near towering windows overlooking storm-covered water as political elites drank beside organized crime leaders, pretending civilization still existed around them. The atmosphere felt beautiful and deeply unnatural. Selena sensed danger immediately after arriving. The ballroom carried the same suffocating tension. She remembered from the first night Kale forced her into public attention. Rival mafia leaders watched her openly now, without bothering to hide their hostility. Some looked disgusted by her presence. Others studied her with cold strategic interest, as though calculating how much damage her death might prevent. Nobody viewed her as human anymore. She had become a symbol, a weakness, a fracture line threatening powerful systems held together through fear and money. Kale remained beside her almost constantly throughout the evening. Though calm externally, subtle signs revealed growing pressure beneath his controlled appearance. His security teams communicated constantly through hidden earpieces. Several trusted men stayed positioned near exits, while rival bodyguards occupied opposite corners of the ballroom. It no longer resembled diplomacy. It resembled war, disguised in luxury. And somewhere within that war, betrayal waited quietly. Selena noticed Roman DeLuca long before he approached them directly. Unlike other criminal leaders obsessed with dominance and intimidation, Roman moved through the ballroom with calculated elegance. Expensive dark suits concealed his danger beneath refinement, while politicians and mafia figures alike listened carefully whenever he spoke. Roman understood something most powerful men did not. Fear worked best when hidden behind charm. Throughout the evening, Selena repeatedly caught him whispering privately with rival leaders near balconies and isolated hallways. Every conversation ended with subtle glances toward Kale, toward her. Roman was building something, not openly, strategically. The realization unsettled Selena deeply because, unlike Kale's brutal methods, Roman manipulated people psychologically. He planted ideas rather than threats. By the middle of the evening, rival organizations already appeared more united against Kale than before arriving, and somehow, Roman never looked directly responsible. Meanwhile, the ballroom itself slowly transformed into a battlefield of silent intimidation. Security personnel carrying concealed firearms repositioned themselves constantly around the room. Certain political guests left early under suspicious urgency. Federal agents disguised as private investors monitored conversations from isolated corners, while wealthy donors quietly exchanged nervous looks over expensive champagne. No one felt safe. The peace gathering was collapsing beneath invisible pressure. Selena's anxiety worsened after noticing Vivian Cross behaving strangely throughout the night. Unlike her usual confident social dominance, Vivian appeared tense beneath carefully maintained elegance. She repeatedly disappeared into restricted corridors before returning moments later with forced composure. At first, Selena assumed Vivian feared Kale's growing instability. Then she accidentally discovered the truth. While searching for a quieter hallway away from the overwhelming ballroom atmosphere, Selena passed a partially open office door near the eastern wing of the estate. Voices echoed softly inside. One belonged to Vivian. The other belonged to Adrian Vale. Selena froze instantly beside the doorway. Inside the office, Vivian handed Adrian a sealed folder containing photographs, financial records, and confidential shipping schedules connected to Kale's organization. Their conversation remained controlled and low, but certain phrases reached Selena clearly enough to destroy any remaining uncertainty. Federal immunity, witness protection, organized crime indictments. Vivian was not simply connected to corrupt authorities. She had become an active federal informant. For several stunned seconds, Selena struggled to process the betrayal unfolding behind the door. Vivian had spent weeks manipulating rival families, humiliating Selena publicly, and maintaining influence within Kale's empire while secretly feeding information to federal investigators. And judging by Adrian's calm confidence, this arrangement had existed for a long time. The emotional shock hit harder than expected, not because Selena trusted Vivian, but because it proved betrayal surrounded Kale from every direction simultaneously. The empire was collapsing internally long before outside enemies attacked. Before Selena could retreat unnoticed, movement suddenly appeared behind her. Kale stood at the end of the corridor. For one terrifying moment, Selena feared he had overheard everything too, but his attention focused elsewhere, toward armed guards moving unusually fast throughout the ballroom entrances. Something dangerous was already happening beyond the office walls. Without explanation, Kale seized Selena's wrist and guided her back toward the ballroom. The atmosphere inside had changed dramatically. Conversations sounded sharper now. Rival leaders no longer pretended friendship. Several bodyguards openly positioned themselves near hidden weapons beneath jackets, while politicians quietly searched for exits. Psychological warfare consumed the room entirely. Nobody trusted the peace gathering anymore. And somehow, Selena had become the center of the storm again, as the orchestra resumed another slow classical performance. Cale abruptly pulled Selena toward the ballroom floor before hundreds of watching eyes. Shock rippled instantly through the room. The second public dance began beneath suffocating silence. This time felt different from the first, far more dangerous. Selena immediately sensed it in the way rival leaders watched them, not with confusion anymore, but certainty. Cale's enemies finally understood what weeks of violence and paranoia had slowly revealed. He cared about her. That emotional truth changed the balance of power across the entire empire. The music echoed softly through the ballroom, while armed guards watched from every corner. Cale's hand remained steady against Selena's waist, but for the first time since meeting him, she noticed something impossible beneath his controlled exterior. Fear, not fear for himself, fear for her. That realization shook Selena emotionally, because men like Cale D'Amico were not supposed to fear losing anyone. His reputation existed precisely because he eliminated emotional attachments before they became weaknesses. Yet now, surrounded by enemies and betrayal, fear shadowed his expression every time another armed man approached too closely. The fear Dawn was unraveling publicly, and everyone noticed. An intellectual realization struck Selena painfully during the dance. Powerful men often claimed emotions made people weak. But the truly dangerous thing about emotions was not weakness. It was unpredictability. Cale's enemies could calculate his violence. They could prepare for revenge, intimidation, and brutality. But genuine attachment changed him into something unstable even his own empire no longer understood. That instability terrified everyone inside the ballroom. The orchestra continued playing while hidden tension escalated toward collapse. Roman DeLuca observed them carefully from the balcony level, his expression unreadable beneath soft golden lighting. Adrian Vale quietly exited through a private corridor after receiving a coded phone message. Vivian stood motionless near the ballroom entrance, looking increasingly nervous. Then chaos erupted silently. One of Cale's trusted captains suddenly drew a concealed weapon toward another security member near the west corridor. Rival guards reacted instantly. Hands moved beneath jackets across the ballroom. Politicians backed away in panic, while the orchestra stopped mid-performance. Betrayal had finally surfaced openly. Cale immediately pulled Selena behind him as armed men flooded the ballroom perimeter. Several rival leaders shouted over one another, while security teams locked into defensive positions around the estate. No one knew who planned to attack first. That uncertainty became more dangerous than bullets. Selena's pulse hammered violently as she realized how close the entire criminal empire stood to civil war. One wrong movement inside the ballroom could trigger a massacre involving every major organization in Chicago. And somehow, her existence sat at the center of it all. Cale tightened his grip protectively while scanning the room with visible fury. Across the ballroom, Roman slowly stepped backward toward the upper exits as though anticipating exactly what would happen next. Then the sound came. A loud metallic slam echoed through the estate. Every head turned toward the ballroom entrance simultaneously. The massive doors had locked from the outside. By the end of the night, the mansion floors were covered in blood, and Selena finally understood why everyone feared loving a mafia king. The sound of the ballroom doors locking from the outside shattered whatever illusion of peace still remained inside Blackthorn Estate. For one frozen second, silence swallowed the room completely. Then panic exploded. Armed guards reached for concealed weapons while politicians rushed desperately toward blocked exits. Crystal glasses crashed across marble floors. Wealthy socialites screamed beneath chandeliers as security teams shoved terrified guests behind overturned tables. The gathering had transformed into a trap, and everyone inside suddenly realized it at the same time. Cale reacted instantly. His hand tightened around Selena's wrist before pulling her behind him as several gunshots erupted near the western balcony. Bullets shattered enormous mirrors across the ballroom walls, while armed men fired from hidden positions above the estate floor. Chaos consumed everything within seconds. Smoke drifted through golden chandelier light. Bodyguards exchanged gunfire between marble columns while wealthy guests crawled desperately across blood-covered floors, searching for shelter. The orchestra musicians abandoned their instruments mid-panic as screaming echoed to the mansion corridors. Selina's heart hammered violently as Kale forced her toward the lower hallway behind the ballroom. Around them, organized crime leaders barked furious orders, while rival families openly turned against each other beneath collapsing alliances. The peace gathering had been designed to fail from the beginning. Someone wanted every powerful figure trapped inside the estate during the attack. And judging by the scale of violence erupting across Blackthorn Mansion, this operation had been planned carefully for months. Kale's security teams responded with brutal precision, but betrayal inside the organization became obvious almost immediately. Several of Kale's own men suddenly turned weapons against loyal guards near the staircase entrances. One trusted captain shot another member of the organization at point-blank range before escaping into the smoke-filled corridors. The Empire was collapsing from within. Traitors had already infected nearly every level of Kale's network. That realization darkened Kale's expression into something terrifyingly cold. For the first time, Selina witnessed the full brutality hidden beneath his carefully controlled reputation. No hesitation remained inside him anymore. No restraint. Kale moved through violence with horrifying efficiency, protecting Selina while eliminating threats around them almost mechanically. Every decision happened instantly. Every movement carried lethal precision sharpened through years of survival inside organized crime. Men feared Kale because he was dangerous, but watching him during the attack revealed something far worse. Violence no longer emotionally affected him at all. The realization shook Selina deeply as they rushed through collapsing hallways filled with smoke and panic. Armed guards escorted political figures toward underground exits while rival factions exchanged gunfire throughout the mansion. And trapped between them all were innocent people. Servants, musicians, kitchen staff, employees with no real connection to the criminal war unfolding around them. Selina watched one young server collapse after stray bullets tore through the corridor near the dining hall. Another employee screamed beside shattered glass while trying unsuccessfully to wake an injured co-worker bleeding across marble tiles. The violence did not care who deserved it. That truth hit Selina harder than anything else. Powerful men always claimed wars existed for loyalty, honor, or survival. But ordinary people suffered most while elites protected themselves behind money and weapons. The ballroom massacre exposed the ugly reality beneath organized crime. Empire survived by sacrificing innocent lives first. Kale dragged Selina away from another burst of gunfire moments before bullets shattered the hallway walls beside them. Security teams pushed deeper into the estate, while explosions echoed somewhere near the underground garage level. The entire mansion was under siege. Yet despite the overwhelming violence surrounding them, Kale refused to leave Selina behind even once. That choice cost him constantly. Several opportunities to escape through secured exits disappeared because he stayed focused on protecting her movement through the estate. Loyal soldiers died buying them time through collapsing corridors, while rival assassins searched aggressively throughout the mansion grounds. And still, Kale never let go of her hand. The emotional conflict inside Selina became unbearable. Fear consumed her every second near him. Yet somewhere beneath the terror, another emotion slowly formed. Something dangerous enough to destroy judgment itself. Attachment. She hated herself for it. Kale represented everything corrupt and violent inside the world surrounding her. Entire lives have been destroyed through his empire. Innocent people suffered because of men like him. But during the chaos-consuming Blackthorn estate, he protected her with a level of loyalty no one else had ever shown. That contradiction tore at her emotionally, while death closed around them from every direction. As they reached the eastern wing staircase, another familiar figure suddenly emerged through the smoke-filled corridor. Roman DeLuca. Unlike the panic-consuming most guests, Roman appeared disturbingly calm beneath the violence erupting across the mansion. Armed men surrounded him strategically, while rival gunfire echoed behind nearby walls. For several tense seconds, Kale and Roman stared at each other across the corridor with open hatred finally visible between them. Selina immediately sensed years of bloodshed hidden beneath the silence. Roman's expression shifted briefly toward her before returning to Kale. And in that moment, fragments of the truth finally surfaced. Roman did not simply want Kale's empire. He wanted revenge. Years earlier, Roman's younger brother had disappeared during one of Chicago's brutal underground conflicts involving multiple mafia organizations. Officially, no one accepted responsibility for the death, but Roman blamed Cale, not because Cale personally killed his brother, because Cale allowed the violence to happen while consolidating power afterward. That grief had poisoned Roman ever since. Every alliance he manipulated, every betrayal unfolding tonight, every political move against Cale's empire, all of it connected back to vengeance disguised as strategy. The realization humanized Roman briefly in Selina's eyes. Then another explosion shook the mansion violently enough to crack ceiling plaster across the staircase walls. Roman disappeared into the smoke moments later, while Cale pulled Selina toward lower security tunnels beneath the estate. The deeper they moved underground, the more horrifying the situation became. Bodies lined several service corridors near the emergency exits. Loyal guards fought desperately against heavily armed attackers, wearing tactical gear without organizational markings. This was no random assault by rival gangs anymore. Someone with military-level funding orchestrated the operation, and Adrian Vale stood at the center of it. Selina discovered the truth accidentally while hiding behind storage containers near the underground transport tunnel. Through partially open security doors, she witnessed Adrian calmly speaking with armed contractors while monitoring surveillance footage from throughout the mansion. Federal agents, private mercenaries, corrupt law enforcement. Adrian controlled both sides simultaneously. The attack against Blackthorn Estate was not designed simply to eliminate Cale. It was engineered to destabilize every major criminal organization in Chicago while allowing federal authorities to seize territory afterward through controlled chaos. Organized crime leaders thought they controlled corruption, but Adrian had manipulated all of them from the beginning. That intellectual realization horrified Selina because it exposed how power truly functioned beneath government systems and criminal empires alike. People like Adrian did not care about justice. They cared about control. Cale noticed Adrian moments later through the security glass separating tunnel corridors. Rage darkened his expression instantly, but before confrontation became possible, another betrayal exploded nearby. Vivian Cross appeared from the shadows, holding a concealed firearm. Her elegant appearance had vanished completely beneath panic and desperation. Tears streaked her makeup while trembling hands aimed directly toward Selina instead of Cale. For one horrifying second, Selina understood the truth. Vivian never hated her simply out of jealousy. She hated her because Selina's existence disrupted years of carefully built manipulation surrounding Cale's empire. Vivian expected eventual power beside Cale, once rival organizations stabilized under federal influence. But Selina changed him emotionally, and emotional men became unpredictable. That unpredictability threatened everyone's plans. Vivian pulled the trigger. Cale reacted instantly. The gunshot echoed violently through the underground corridor as Cale shoved Selina aside moments before impact. The bullet tore through his shoulder instead, sending him crashing against the tunnel wall, while guards immediately returned fire toward Vivian's position. She disappeared into the chaos seconds later. Blood spread rapidly across Cale's dark clothing, while Selina knelt beside him in shock. Yet even injured, Cale focused entirely on pulling her toward the emergency tunnel exit, while explosions continued collapsing sections of the estate overhead. The mansion was dying around them, and beneath the collapsing structure, another devastating truth finally surfaced. During the desperate escape through underground archives connected to Blackthorn's older foundations, Selina accidentally discovered hidden files revealing information about her own family. Years earlier, her father had unknowingly worked as a financial accountant connected to one of Chicago's corrupt development corporations, the same corporation secretly controlled by political allies tied to Cale's empire. When her father discovered illegal trafficking payments hidden within company records, he attempted reporting them anonymously. Weeks later, he died during what authorities labeled a workplace accident. But it had never been an accident. Someone silenced him. Selina's entire body went cold while reading the classified reports. Her family had been connected to this empire long before she ever entered Cale's world. And judging by Cale's expression after realizing what she discovered, he already knew the truth. That revelation shattered whatever emotional trust had formed between them. Before Selena could fully process the betrayal, the underground tunnel erupted violently behind them. A massive explosion tore through Blackthorn Estate with enough force to collapse entire sections of the mansion overhead. Fire consumed the lower corridors instantly, while smoke and debris swallowed the emergency pathways beneath the estate. Guards screamed warnings through collapsing tunnels, as Selena lost sight of Cale within the chaos. The final image she saw before darkness and smoke separated them completely was Cale turning back toward the burning corridor instead of escaping. Then the tunnel ceiling collapsed between them, and Cale D'Amico disappeared inside the explosion. Even after Cale vanished, powerful men across America still lowered their voices whenever his name was mentioned. The explosion at Blackthorn Estate became one of the most mysterious disasters in modern Chicago history. Official reports blamed a gas line failure triggered during a private political gathering. Federal agencies sealed large portions of the investigation almost immediately, while surviving guests refused public interviews. News networks discussed corruption, organized crime, and financial conspiracy for weeks before the story slowly disappeared beneath newer scandals. But inside America's criminal underworld, everyone understood the truth. Blackthorn had not been an accident. It had been a massacre, and Cale D'Amico was presumed dead beneath the ruins. Months passed after the explosion, yet his name still carried enough fear to silence rooms. Powerful men lowered their voices whenever discussing him. Former allies disappeared without warning. Rival organizations expanded territory carefully, as though afraid Cale might somehow return from the grave if they moved too aggressively. Death had not weakened his reputation. It had transformed him into myth. For Selena, survival after Blackthorn felt less like freedom and more like exile. She relocated under a false identity to a smaller neighborhood outside downtown Chicago, where no one recognized her face from whispered criminal rumors. The apartment she rented looked nothing like the luxury prisons of Cale's world. Cracked windows overlooked narrow streets, filled with ordinary people rushing toward ordinary lives. At first, the normalcy felt unreal. No armed guards, no hidden surveillance, no politicians shaking hands with murderers beneath chandeliers. Only silence, yet peace never truly returned. Trauma followed Selena everywhere. Loud noises instantly tightened her chest. Black vehicles parked too long outside her building triggered panic attacks. Some nights she woke breathless from dreams filled with collapsing tunnels, smoke, and Cale disappearing behind walls of fire. The psychological damage ran deeper than fear alone. Cale's world had changed the way she viewed humanity itself. She no longer trusted systems pretending morality existed within power. Politicians appearing on television discussing justice looked identical to the corrupt officials she watched dying beside traffickers and killers. Wealthy charity organizations reminded her of criminal networks hiding exploitation beneath polished public images. Once someone witnessed corruption clearly, innocence never fully returned. That realization emotionally isolated her more than loneliness ever had before. Selena attempted rebuilding life anyway. She found work playing piano at a quiet jazz restaurant near the riverfront. The owner never asked questions about her past, as long as she arrived on time and avoided trouble. For brief moments beneath soft music and dim lights, Selena almost felt human again. Almost. Because even after Cale vanished, danger continued hunting her. Several former associates connected to rival mafia families still believed Selena possessed sensitive information surviving Blackthorn's destruction. Unknown men occasionally appeared near her workplace asking subtle questions. Once, her apartment had clearly been searched while she was gone despite no signs of forced entry. Someone kept watching her. That fear worsened as Chicago's criminal empire fractured violently. Without Cale's control holding together, the balance of power collapsed completely after Blackthorn. Smaller organizations fought openly across the city for abandoned territory. Drug routes shifted constantly. Federal raids increased while political scandals exposed corruption tied to judges, senators, and financial corporations connected to organized crime. Adrian Vale publicly positioned himself as a federal hero leading anti-corruption investigations after surviving Blackthorn Estate. The irony disgusted Selena. Television interviews praised Adrian for fighting criminal influence, despite the blood covering his hands. He manipulated investigations carefully, sacrificing certain mafia organizations while secretly strengthening federal control over surviving criminal operations. Justice remained another form of business, and Adrian remained one of its wealthiest investors. Meanwhile, Roman DeLuca emerged as the strongest surviving criminal leader in Chicago. Unlike Cale's violent dominance, Roman rebuilt influence strategically through political leverage and financial alliances. Publicly, he presented himself as a sophisticated businessman stabilizing chaos after Blackthorn's destruction. Privately, whispers ascribed him as more dangerous than Cale ever became, because Roman did not rule through fear alone. He ruled through patience. Selena senses influence everywhere now. News articles subtly defended organizations tied to his investments. Politicians once loyal to Cale suddenly supported Roman-backed policies. Entire neighborhoods shifted under his expanding financial control. And somehow, Roman always remained one step ahead of law enforcement. That level of strategic power terrified Selena deeply because she understood something others did not. Roman blamed Cale for his brother's death, but revenge alone no longer motivated him. Now he wanted complete control. The emotional pressure surrounding Selena intensified after mysterious clues began appearing. The first arrived anonymously through regular mail. No return address. No fingerprints. Inside the envelope rested a single black and white photograph showing Lake Michigan during winter beneath handwritten numbers Selena immediately recognized. Coordinates. At first, she assumed the message was another threat from surviving enemies. Then she noticed something impossible hidden near the bottom corner of the photograph. A tiny symbol Cale once carved absent-mindedly into wooden furniture during moments of deep thought inside the mansion library. Her blood went cold instantly. Someone connected to Cale had sent the message, or Cale himself somehow survived Blackthorn. Selena tried ignoring the possibility. Logic insisted no one could survive the explosion beneath collapsing underground tunnels. Federal recovery teams identified dozens of bodies from the ruins afterward, though Cale's remains were never officially confirmed. Still, hope remained dangerous, especially for someone emotionally tied to a dead mafia king. Days later, another message appeared, this time hidden beneath the piano bench at the jazz restaurant where Selena worked nightly. Again, no signature. Only another coded clue referencing an old Chicago church abandoned decades earlier after suspicious fires connected to organized crime investigations. The pattern became undeniable. Someone guided her intentionally. Someone who understood her connection to Cale intimately. Fear and curiosity slowly consumed her thoughts again. Meanwhile, federal investigations surrounding Blackthorn Estate exposed deeper layers of corruption across America's political systems. Secret financial accounts linked senators, judges, and major corporations to trafficking networks hidden beneath development projects and offshore investments. Public outrage exploded nationwide. Several politicians resigned. Others disappeared before testifying. But despite the chaos, the most powerful figures remained untouched, protected by wealth, intelligence agencies, or carefully hidden alliances impossible to expose publicly. Selena watched the investigations unfold through television broadcasts while realizing something deeply disturbing. Cale had never been the top of the empire. He had only been one powerful piece inside a machine far larger and older than organized crime itself. That intellectual realization haunted her constantly because it meant Blackthorn solved nothing. The corruption remained alive. Only the players changed. The emotional exhaustion nearly destroyed her. Months of paranoia, grief, and isolation slowly hollowed Selena emotionally until she barely recognized herself anymore. She stopped forming friendships. She avoided crowded places. Even music no longer comforted her the way it once had. Some nights she wondered whether surviving Blackthorn had actually been a mistake, because psychologically, part of her never escaped the ruins. Then another clue changed everything again. Late one snowy evening after leaving the jazz restaurant, Selena discovered a folded newspaper waiting beside her apartment door. Most of the paper looked ordinary, except for one circled article discussing a burned church outside Chicago scheduled for demolition. Inside the article margins, several words had been marked carefully in black ink. Trust no federal protection. Roman knows the truth. He is watching you. And beneath those warnings rested one final sentence. You were never meant to die at Blackthorn. Selena's breathing slowed painfully while reading the message. Only someone deeply connected to the explosion could know that. For the first time since Cale vanished, certainty replaced hope. He was alive, or someone dangerously close to him remained hidden. That realization pulled Selena back into the darkness she spent months trying to escape. The coded warnings continued afterward. Strange symbols appeared near her workplace. Anonymous phone calls delivered only silence before disconnecting. Once, she noticed the same black sedan following her across 3 separate neighborhoods before disappearing into traffic. Cale had prepared something before Blackthorn, a survival strategy. The clues proved it. Gradually, Selena began piecing together hidden patterns from memories she once ignored. Cale's late-night meetings, secret financial transfers, underground escape tunnels beneath multiple properties, trusted associates disappearing weeks before the explosion. He had anticipated betrayal long before Blackthorn Estate burned. And perhaps the most terrifying realization of all slowly surfaced afterward. Cale may have allowed the world to believe he died intentionally. That possibility changed everything. Because if Cale still lived in secret, then every remaining criminal organization in America sat unknowingly on the edge of another war. Selena became obsessed with finding answers despite understanding the danger involved. Part of her needed closure emotionally. Another part needed to know whether the man who protected her through chaos truly survived, or whether she had psychologically broken enough to start chasing ghosts. The final clue arrived during heavy rain near midnight. An old subway locker key appeared inside her apartment mailbox without explanation. Attached to it rested a tiny handwritten note containing only an address. St. Lazarus Church, South Chicago. Midnight. Against every instinct warning her to stay away, Selena went. Rain hammered abandoned streets as she drove toward the decaying industrial district surrounding St. Lazarus Church. The neighborhood looked forgotten by time itself. Empty warehouses, broken streetlights, and boarded buildings swallowed beneath darkness. The church stood isolated at the end of a narrow road overlooking abandoned train tracks. Massive stone walls rose against the storm while shattered stained glass windows reflected occasional lightning across the wet pavement. Half the structure appeared destroyed by fire years earlier, leaving blackened towers stretching into the night like skeletons. Selena stepped inside cautiously. Dust-covered collapsed pews beneath faint moonlight filtering through broken glass. The air smelled of rain, ash, and ancient wood slowly rotting in silence. For several long moments, nothing moved. Then lightning flashed across the church interior. And deep within the shadows near the ruined altar, Selena saw the outline of a tall figure standing perfectly still. Cale D'Amico was alive. The final dance between Selena and Cale began moments before an empire collapsed forever. For several seconds inside the ruined church, Selena could not breathe. Rain echoed softly through the shattered ceiling while lightning illuminated Cale's face in fragments, older, exhausted, and scarred in ways impossible to hide. The explosion at Blackthorn had not killed him, but survival had clearly caused something deep inside him. The man standing before her no longer looked untouchable. He looked hunted. Silence filled the abandoned church while years of violence, betrayal, and grief seemed to hang between them like ghosts refusing to disappear. Selena had imagined this moment endlessly during the months after Blackthorn, yet reality felt heavier than memory, because Cale was alive, and somehow that truth terrified her more than his death ever had. He stepped slowly from the shadows beneath broken stained glass windows while distant thunder rolled across South Chicago. Beneath the long, dark coat, concealing most of his frame, fresh injuries still marked his movements. One side of his neck carried burn scars partially hidden beneath his collar. Blackthorn had nearly destroyed him, but not completely. Selena immediately noticed something else too. The emotional coldness defining Cale for so long had changed, not disappeared. Changed. For the first time since entering his world, pain remained visible in his eyes without being buried beneath violence or control. Months of isolation, betrayal, and war had fractured the armor surrounding him. And strangely, that made him more dangerous than before, because men with nothing left to protect often stop fearing consequences entirely. Cale led Selina deeper into the abandoned church toward underground chambers hidden beneath collapsed prayer halls. The tunnels below St. Lazarus looked ancient. Originally built during Chicago's Prohibition era, before criminal organizations transformed them into emergency escape routes decades earlier. They're finally separated from surveillance and immediate danger. The truth surrounding everything began surfacing piece by piece. Blackthorn Estate had never been intended as a peace summit. It had been bait. Cale revealed that long before the explosion. He discovered Adrian Vale secretly manipulating both federal agencies and criminal organizations to create a new centralized power structure beneath government protection. Rival mafia families, corrupt politicians, trafficking networks, and intelligence contacts had all become disposable obstacles in Adrian's long-term strategy. Blackthorn was designed to eliminate everyone powerful enough to resist him at once. Cale only survived because he anticipated betrayal early enough to create hidden escape plans beneath the estate. But even survival carried devastating costs. Most of his loyal inner circle died during the explosion. Entire sections of his empire collapsed afterward. Remaining allies either vanished, switched loyalty to Roman DeLuca, or surrendered to federal protection deals. Cale no longer ruled Chicago. He barely controlled survival. Yet the revelation that shook Selina most came afterward. The truth behind why Cale chose her that first night. For months, Selina believed she entered Cale's world by accident. But there had never been an accident. Years earlier, after her father discovered financial corruption tied to trafficking operations, someone secretly copied hidden accounting records before his death. Those records eventually vanished inside encrypted financial systems impossible for federal investigators to access directly. Cale spent years searching for missing files because they contained evidence powerful enough to destroy multiple criminal empires and expose political corruption reaching Washington itself. Selina unknowingly possessed the final access key, not physically, biologically. Her father had hidden encryption codes within a private trust connected only through Selina's legal identity and family inheritance records before his murder. Cale discovered the connection shortly before the ballroom gathering months earlier. That was why he chose her publicly. Not for romance. Not for manipulation. At first, Selina represented survival, another strategic piece inside a war for power. The realization hit like betrayal all over again. Yet beneath the pain came another truth even harder to ignore. Somewhere along the way, Cale's intentions changed. Selina saw it clearly now in exhaustion consuming him. The emotional detachment that once defined him had cracked completely after Blackthorn. Protecting her stopped being strategic long ago, and that terrified him more than enemies ever had. Because for the first time in his life, Cale loved something more than power. Outside the church tunnels, Chicago moved closer toward collapse. Roman DeLuca had officially absorbed most surviving criminal territories after Blackthorn, while publicly presenting himself as a solution to organized violence. Politicians supported him quietly. Federal authorities ignored his expanding influence. Financial corporations connected to trafficking operations resumed business beneath new leadership structures. The empire survived by changing faces, and Roman intended control what remained of it permanently. But obsession had corrupted him too deeply. Cale revealed Roman secretly orchestrated multiple attacks after Blackthorn, not only to destroy rival organizations, but to capture Selina alive. Roman believed the encrypted financial records connected to her family could expose every hidden system controlling organized corruption across America. And more dangerously, Roman blamed Selina emotionally for Cale's transformation. In Roman's mind, she weakened the only rival he truly respected. That obsession pushed Roman toward increasingly reckless decisions, including one final gathering. Hours later, hidden messages sent through surviving criminal networks drew every remaining major player toward an unfinished lakeside estate once intended as Cale's future headquarters before Blackthorn destroyed his empire. Roman arrived believing he would finally eliminate Cale permanently. Adrian Vale arrived expecting access to the missing financial evidence. Federal tactical teams surrounded the property secretly, and Selina entered the estate beside Cale, knowing none of them would leave unchanged. The unfinished mansion overlooked Lake Michigan beneath freezing rain and distant police sirens. Construction remained incomplete across large sections of the property, leaving exposed steel beams and dark hallways resembling ruins before the battle even began. Inside, the atmosphere felt almost identical to the ballroom where Selena first danced with Cale months earlier. Luxury and violence intertwined beneath elegant lighting. Powerful people pretending civilization still existed around monsters. Only this time, nobody bothered hiding the weapons. Armed guards occupied every level of the estate, while rival factions watched each other across the grand ballroom, filled with unfinished marble floors and shattered mirrors reflecting fractured light. The Empire stood moments away from tearing itself apart completely. Roman confronted Cale near the center of the ballroom, while political elites and federal contacts observed carefully from surrounding balconies. Years of hatred finally surfaced openly between them without masks or diplomacy remaining. Roman accused Cale of poisoning everything he touched: organizations, cities, people. Cale answered with brutal honesty. Power had already poisoned all of them long before either man gained influence. That intellectual truth silenced the room briefly, because everyone inside understood it was real. Corruption did not begin with criminals carrying weapons. It began when society rewarded powerful men for sacrificing ordinary lives quietly enough to avoid consequences. The emotional tension escalated rapidly afterward. Adrian demanded the encrypted files connected to Selena's family records. Roman demanded Cale surrender control permanently. Rival organizations prepared for violence, while federal agents secretly positioned themselves around the state perimeter. And in the middle of the collapsing empire stood Selena, no longer powerless, no longer invisible. For the first time, she fully understood her role within the war surrounding her life. She represented truth, not justice. Truth. And truth terrified powerful people more than bullets ever could. Then everything exploded at once. Gunfire erupted across the ballroom after one of Adrian's federal teams attempted arrest operations against several rival leaders. Roman's men returned fire instantly, while Cale's surviving loyalists pushed Selena toward emergency exits through collapsing corridors. The unfinished estate transformed into a battlefield within seconds. Smoke consumed upper balconies, while shattered chandeliers crashed onto marble floors. Wealthy elites screamed beneath collapsing glass, as years of corruption finally devoured itself publicly. Vivian Cross attempted escaping through underground parking tunnels before Roman intercepted her personally. After months manipulating both criminal empires and federal authorities, Vivian discovered too late that everyone she betrayed viewed her as disposable. She disappeared into the burning lower levels moments before another explosion collapsed the tunnel system entirely. Adrian's fate proved equally brutal. While attempting to retrieve Selena during the chaos, hidden financial evidence connected to trafficking operations leaked automatically through encrypted networks Cale activated before the confrontation began. Federal databases, media organizations, and international investigators received everything simultaneously. Politicians, judges, corporate executives, agents. Entire systems became exposed publicly within minutes. Adrian realized too late that Cale never intended surviving through power anymore. He intended destroying the empire itself. The exposure triggered immediate panic among federal teams surrounding the estate. Gunfire erupted outside as law enforcement agencies turned against each other beneath conflicting orders and collapsing alliances. The machine protecting corruption had begun eating itself alive. And through the chaos, Cale found Selena one final time inside the ballroom where everything first started. Fire spread across unfinished walls, while rain poured through shattered skylights overhead. Sirens echoed across the lakefront as smoke swallowed sections of the collapsing estate. Then Cale reached for her hand. And beneath the burning empire, the final dance began. No orchestra played this time, only distant gunfire and collapsing steel. Yet the moment mirrored their first dance perfectly. Fear, destruction, enemies watching from shadows. Except now Selena understood the truth hidden beneath it all. Cale never forced her onto the ballroom floor to humiliate or control her. He did it because powerful men needed to see publicly that she belonged under his protection before the war started. That realization broke something emotional inside her completely. The feared mafia king who terrified Chicago had spent months destroying himself trying to protect the one person his world should have consumed. For several brief moments beneath burning lights and falling ash, they moved together through silence while the empire collapsed around them. Bittersweet peace existed there somehow. Not redemption. Never redemption. People had died because of the world Kale helped build. But somewhere within the destruction, fragments of humanity survived too. Then the final betrayal came. Roman appeared through the smoke holding a weapon with trembling hands, emotionally shattered beneath years of revenge and obsession. He no longer looked powerful, only broken. The confrontation ended violently moments later as another explosion tore through the estate foundations beneath the ballroom floor. Kale shoved Selena toward emergency exits while the structure began collapsing around them. The last thing Selena saw before armed officers dragged her outside was Kale disappearing back into flames as sections of the mansion imploded behind him. By dawn, the unfinished estate burned beside Lake Michigan while police, federal agents, and emergency crews surrounded the ruins. Bodies were recovered for hours. Roman DeLuca's remains were identified near the collapsed ballroom. Adrian Vale vanished entirely during the chaos. But when investigators searched the wreckage for Kale D'Amico, they found nothing. No body. No confirmation. Only ashes, smoke, and unanswered questions.